What's going on, guys? Coach Gaglione here. This is another edition of the Powerlifting for the People podcast. Excuse me. I'm your host, Coach Gaglione. We got a special guest today, Michael. Michael is one of our lifters at the Larry Wheels Invitational. Took second place overall. Did really well. How you doing today?
Pretty good.
Awesome.
Thank you for.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I wanted to get a chance to speak with some people like yourself. You in my kind of view, you lifted really well, and I'd love to kind of hear a little bit more about your experiences at the meet. But before we kind of dive into that, I want to hear a little bit about like kind of how you got into lifting, just kind of when you first got started, and then kind of maybe walk me through what made you decide that you wanted to compete.
I started lifting in high school when I played football, and I stopped when COVID happened. So I put on some weight. In high school, I was 175, and during quarantine, when the pandemic happened, I put on some weight, and I had a friend that was just consistently going to the gym, so I kept going with him, and then me and him just fell in love with powerlifting. And then from there, that's what happened.
Yeah. Was there any like I guess, particular lifters that kind of inspired you or any kind of, people that you were kind of following at the time that kind of made you like want to, focus on more like lifting for strength?
Oh, Larry Wheels for sure. No doubt about it.
And then I guess, from that time until now, what has been the difference been as far as like, I guess what types of gyms were you kind of training in initially versus kind of, I guess the facilities and, that you're using now?
The gym that I go to is LA Fitness. I couldn't find, any gyms that um like strictly for powerlifting. Like they're usually just far. So right now I'm still at LA Fitness. Sometimes I go to Larry's gym here and there, but for right now it's LA Fitness.
And do you usually train like with some buddies or usually by yourself or some combination or like what does that look kind of
Yeah,
look?
I usually train by myself, but sometimes I'm with a buddy.
And then what I guess does your like kind of routine like kind of consist of? Like are you like how many days a week are you kind of at the gym and all that?
I go a week. I don't know if you know Jamal Browner. I use his program. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday off, Thursday, Friday.
So like 4 day kind of routine.
Yeah.
Nice. So I guess it's like obviously you got some inspiration from Larry and many others and you kind of got motivated. Um what made you decide like I guess that this was going to be like your first contest and how did anything kind of change in terms of like how you were approaching your training, kind of the prep going into the meet? Like just kind of walk me through that.
I wasn't, I thought I was never going to do a powerlifting meet because I was looking at other people like stronger than me.
Right.
And I'm not going to be strong enough to, power lift and compete. And when Larry posted on his Instagram, I was like, might as well, why not just try it out, see what happens. And people was just telling me just to do it because you never know. And like some guy at the gym, I talked to him and he said like your best bet you might get top three. You never know what happens. And I just got top two.
Nice. Yeah, and if you so I want to kind of we'll kind of go into like the day. I thought again I think outside of well, I guess I think you got all your third attempts. I think you kind of had a little bit of a technical error on like your second bench, but walk us through like the meet, kind of what was kind of going through your head. Like, were you nervous? I know it seemed like a pretty good day. You could kind of just take us through like when you were kind of checked in and then, kind of walk us through like the day.
Um, I was nervous to make weight. I thought I was gonna make weight. I was pretty nervous about that. And I knew Blake was gonna be a challenge for me just by looking at him. I knew he was. Um, I was nervous, but once I got started lifting, warming up, it was just another day in the office, just lifting weight. And I thought my shoulder was going to be a problem because 2 weeks prior from the meet, I was having shoulder problems on my left one. And I took a week off before the meet, just no problem. I felt good. And yeah.
Yeah, so I think, squats went very well. I'm not sure if that was kind of a PR for you, but what did you end up on squat?
I ended up with 6'11". I was wanted to go for 6'20". That would have been a PR. 6'11" was a PR. Um, my knees were kind of, and they felt a little bit weird, but I'll take the 6'11".
Certainly a good, I think for a lot of people maybe listening, if you're someone like Michael that maybe it's getting ready for their first meet or haven't competed yet, I'm sure it's definitely different. Having to do your best on a particular day in front of judges, and then how is it also like, with, Larry spotting you and having some other like people like Dan Green, some notable lifters kind of watching you lift.
Uh, my mindset was I can't fell in front of them. I wanted to get lift up, but obviously I fell on bench, and my second attempt I had to get it up, and I got it up.
And then yeah, so I think ended up kind of like I think had maybe just a little bit of like a technical error, kind of came back and kind of nailed it. And then look, at least from my view, it looks like deadlifts like went pretty smooth. But what did you end up on deadlift, and how did kind of it feel like kind of finishing out the day?
Deadlift felt good. I was actually underestimating deadlift because usually I'm my deadlift my weakest lift, and I went for 606, and it went up pretty fast. And last Tuesday I actually went for a PR and I got 630. So yeah,
So you had a little bit more like in the tank, I guess.
I did.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's good for people to know that you don't necessarily have to like hit your all-time bests in every single lift to have a good performance and a good total. Again, 8 for 9 is great. I think that you had like probably a little bit like left in your squat and deadlift, but again, for your first time doing all three, it was like a smaller event, a more intimate event. I think that you kind of played it smart. Everything kind of looked good. What was it kind of like? Obviously, this was like your first. I'm not sure if you've ever like been to another, like were you ever a spectator at another meet before? But what was so I need to kind of tell the listeners about like, what was it like, the camaraderie, lifting with other people, getting help like with warm-ups and stuff. So like what was the overall experience for like the event like for you?
It was good. Honestly, Blake, I was talking to Blake. He helped me through it. Obviously, that wasn't his first one. He told me that it's just it's just another day in the office. It's nothing new. It's like at the end of the gym. Um, it was very comfortable. I wasn't, I didn't feel out of place. Everybody was nice. Everybody was welcoming. Um, yeah,
And if maybe I know you kind of said I think this is kind of an important point for people to listen. So obviously, did really well, squatted and deadlifted over 600 pounds, benched over 400 pounds. Um, and it's really interesting. So for someone and how old are you for people that don't know?
I'm 22.
So a great total for a junior lifter. I know sometimes we get it twisted because we're looking at, some of the people like your age that might be like, deadlifting 800 pounds or, benching 500 pounds. And I did my first meet at 18 years old. I did my first meet back in 2006, and there wasn't a lot of people were not posting stuff on the internet. Mark Bell had his like super training channel at the time. Mike Teixeira started kind of posting some stuff, and he was doing well. He was still in single ply equipment at the time, and he was doing really well. Um, with the IPF and all that stuff. But outside of like those guys, I mean, Pete, I don't know if you know the name Pete Rubish. Pete Rubish was kind of came shortly after, and then Delilla Bridges and then kind of Dan Green and Stan Efferding kind of, in my opinion, kind of paved the way for like raw powerlifting. When kind of equipped lifting started to kind of take a little bit of like a back seat in terms of like what the public was seeing. Um, but I just always kind of think about like if I was in your shoes, if I kind of grew up in this era, I don't know if I'd be putting on meat. I don't know if I'd be coaching people. I don't know if I would have had the confidence. Um, maybe if I had got a guide a guidance like someone like myself, like that was one of the big things for me kind of helping Larry was just kind of focus a little bit more on being a little bit more tunnel vision and just kind of focusing on your own progress. But anyways, what I'm kind of getting at is sometimes we can be so fixated with social media, the algorithm's going to kind of feed us like the top 1%, the freak of freaks. It's going to show us the Larry Wheels. It's going to show us the Jamal Browners. But there's a lot of people like yourself that are ultra talented. I'm sure you were like a very, good athlete, good football player. In my era, a lot of times, like we were like the washed up football player, or I was, wrestling was my sport. I did wrestling and football, but wrestling was my main sport. I kind of couldn't cut it in college. So I just decided to start powerlifting at 18. So a lot of the powerlifters in my era were kind of like the athletes that didn't make it. And now we're kind of seeing athletes like yourself that do have some great talent. But sometimes even people like yourself, sometimes that we don't have the confidence to put ourselves out there. So I give tip of my hat to you, and I think it's great. I think it's important for people to see that we sometimes we all struggle with our confidence. Sometimes we all may kind of feel like we're not good enough or we're not ready. But like you said, you'll never know if you don't try. And you did really well. Blake's an incredible lifter, so to take second place to him, and you guys, you guys weren't, he didn't really deadlift well, so you guys weren't actually too far off in terms of points. You weighed in a little bit lighter, so that kind of helped you with like your Wilks and like your dot score. I thought you did great. So I think it's important to, um, you know, if you are kind of able to like do the lifts to a contest standard, why not give it a try and do things at a local meet. So, anything else that you'd like to add as far as that you felt like was super helpful at the event, or maybe if someone's maybe in your shoes and they're looking to do their first meet, like what advice could you give them if they were kind of on the fence of signing up for one?
You're never too weak to be in a powerlifting competition. You never know what numbers you can put up once you're there. Um, Once you put your feet in those waters, you'll be fine and you'll put up some good numbers. You never know what you could do.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, we sometimes we can overestimate what we could like accomplish in the short term. But like someone like yourself, like I said, that really kind of started lifting. I think you said like around 5 years ago, and I'm sure that you weren't, lifting 600 pounds 5 years ago, right? So it was probably a slow but smooth, consistent progression. So if you put in the time, you put the work in. I think a lot of times we underestimate what we could do. I've been, competing for almost 20 years. I'm kind of slowing down like my powerlifting, but I've accomplished a lot. I've squatted 800 pounds in six different weight classes, total 2,100 pounds. And now I'm kind of getting more into strict curl. I'm kind of happy with what I've done in terms of powerlifting, kind of focusing more on coaching and helping kind of build the community like with events like this. So, um, for anyone that's listening, if they want to maybe follow along your journey and like what you're doing, maybe like Instagram or something like that, where can they find you?
They can find me on TikTok, Instagram at Mike Lifts 3, and no YouTube yet, but it'll get there.
Nice. YouTube is like my preferred thing because I like speaking a little longer. I have a hard time keeping things to like 60 seconds, or I guess now you get like a little bit more time, but yeah, man, I think you did great. So definitely give, Michael a follow. We hope to see you in the future at our events. And if this podcast helped you, please give it a 5-star review. Thank you guys so much for listening. Until next time, stay strong, and we'll see you soon.